Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 1930s. It is January 1st today. Let's take a look back on the 1920s and how swell of a decade it was.
The 1920s had its highs and some lows, but we're going to start with the lows and end on some highs.
To start off the 1920s, there was a rise in the KKK, with nearly 200 people dead because of it.
Now to the stock market crash of 1929. Many people lost their jobs and some people became homeless because of this.
Next is the 18th Amendment, which banned alcohol.
I know that greatly affected your night outs.
Because of this, we had speakeasies selling giggle like.
It's called a speakeasy. I don't think we should be talking about that on here. On the good news, we had Lindbergh fly a plane from New York to Paris, and during this, Yankee Stadium had 3 minutes of silence for him.
That's a good transition to sports. Let's talk about Babe Ruth and his 60 home runs.
Isn't he a big cheese? There will be no one like him again. Speaking of him, we have him here for an interview. Is there any advice you have for the youngins?
Well, sons and boys, and to everyone, my advice to baseball. I think the last time I was in Skidmore, not the last time I was in Syracuse, but the last time, or the first time I played here, I think it was about 30 years ago. Well, now I can say one thing, that is this, boys. I was a boy like yourselves once, and I had to play very hard. Well, I guess the one important thing about my playing ball, I love to play. And they grew up with me. And I know you boys like to play, and it's got to grow up with you. You can't go out and play once or twice a week. You got to get that ball and play with it all the time. You got to dream baseball. You got to sleep it. And if you do, outside of your studies, play real hard. You're bound to come out on top because it keeps you out of other mischief. It keeps you away from corners, talking about evil things. Keep your mind on baseball and your studies, and you'll be successful at the end.
Thanks for the advice. I hope you youngins caught that.
We're coming to the near end, so let's do some recap quickly. In the past decade, there have been a rise in flappers, with women getting better rights, and with the 19th Amendment, they can now vote.
Yes, sir. A gender gap is slowly growing smaller and smaller. A very important thing that happened in the Roaring Twenties is the Harlem Renaissance. With this came my favorite music, jazz.
Let's talk about Louis Armstrong. Amazing.
We don't have time to talk about one person. We have other people like Duke Ellington and Bessie Smith.
This movement was named by an anthology by Alan Locke. It didn't feel right for me to say the title, so let's move on.
Let's not forget about the Palmer raids and how it was raids made to capture and arrest suspect radical leftists. This was administered by President Woodrow Wilson.
And there you go, folks. Those are some of the big events in the 1920s. Let's make the 1930s an even greater decade.